Hey, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com. I want to share with you today an easy way to get consistent levels on your voiceover recordings. Now, you may not do much voiceover work, but if you've ever thought you might be hired to record a podcast or mix a podcast or maybe do your own podcast, or maybe something like a TV commercial, radio commercial, voiceover for film, audiobooks, there's a lot of areas out there that maybe some home studio folks like yourself might want to exploit as far as ways to get work. And it's actually not as boring as you might think it is. It's actually a pretty fun thing to do. So, as you might know, I do a weekly podcast over at HomeStudioCorner.com called Ask Joe. And here's the template that I use. So you got the intro, the cheesy, stupid intro that I change every week. This is Ask Joe number 72. Okay, so that's silly. And then you got the intro music, and then the voice comes in. So here's what that sounds like. Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name's Joe Gilder from Homes. Okay, everything's at a nice loud level. We're looking at a dynamic range of about 12. Okay, so that's a good, consistent, loud level without squashing everything. Okay, so what do? The problem with voiceover recording is that from one recording to the next, everything's not going to be exactly the same. You're going to record at a slightly different level. Things may change, and you want to have a consistent volume from one to the next. Over the years, I've done podcasts at wildly different levels because I didn't have any sort of standard of what volume was going to be for that podcast. Now, you could use standards as far as metering and looking at the meters and getting those meters to a consistent level, and that's fine, but I found actually a little bit easier way. And it's worked well for me. It may not be quote-unquote proper, but it works well for me for my podcast. I feel like for the last couple of months, it's been a consistent level from week to week. And so here's how it works, okay? I'm going to delete this audio. Let's pretend like we're recording a podcast for next week, okay? Here comes the intro music, and I'll actually record a quick snippet. Hey, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com, recording an awesome snippet for YouTube subscribers. Okay, so let's listen to that. I'm guessing it's pretty low. Okay, we can't hear that at all, right? So there's a couple options here. The thing is, I've got a template here. So the very first podcast I did, I set up an EQ, a chain with EQ, compression, and limiting on the bus and a little bit of de-essing so that it gets me the sound that I want. The problem is what level you feed into that is going to determine how much limiting and compression is happening. And so if you go too low, everything's going to be too quiet. If you go too high, it might be a little too much. So basically, this is something that I came up with. It's called the normalize feature. I didn't come up with normalizing, but I've never used it for anything practical until now. So if I right-click on this piece of audio and hit normalize, you'll watch the waveform jump up in volume. Boom. What it's doing, it's just taking the loudest section of that audio and turning it up just shy of clipping. So it's turning the loudest part up as loud as it'll go without clipping. So now, take a listen. Hey, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com. Okay, so what's happening here is I've been able to get a maximum volume that's going to be consistent from one episode to the next. I speak at roughly the same volume, but let's say one week I record the preamp a little hotter than the next week, or maybe I forget and I have it set way too low. That's okay. I can just use the normalize feature. It's going to get that level up to the level that I mixed at the very first time, and so now my EQ, compression, and limiting is all set according to that level. And so now all I have to do is record, normalize, I give it a quick listen when I'm done with the episode to make sure it doesn't sound weird, and as long as it's good, I export and I'm out of there. So if you ever have any voiceover or podcast work in the future, you're going to struggle with consistency and levels from one to the next. Use this tip, and it probably go a long way saving you a lot of time and getting you a good, nice sound and a consistent level from one to the next.